Today on the Coach of What podcast, we have a very special guest. While competing at Trine University, she tallied 62 home runs and recorded a .784 slugging percentage. She was selected a two-time All-American, four-time All-Region, and a four-time All-Conference player. She then competed professionally for the ASBA, where she was selected twice to be part of the All-Star team. She is now the head coach at Adrian College. Today, we welcome Coach Kaylee Fox to the Coach of What podcast. With the world of coaching evolving and the carousel always changing, we're going to sit down with some coaches, and we're going to figure out what they coach, how they coach, and most importantly, why they got into this profession. My name is Kason Wilkinson, and I am your host of the Coach's Why podcast.
That was my Coach's Why.
Welcome back to the Coach's Why podcast. We have a very special guest today. Our very first softball coach going to be joining the show for us. Coach Kaylee Fox from Adrian College. How are you doing today?
Great. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you very much. As I said already, I will say to you again, I appreciate you taking the time to jump on here today. Looks like you're inside of you're in a cage right now, huh? You just got done with some BP?
Well, actually, I decided that the best place to do this was in my hitting facility. So we came out here. My assistant coach actually has a lesson. So there's a lesson going on, and I'm just sitting here hanging out.
Oh, okay. I got you. Well, to be honest with you, no one else has taken the interview to where they're, whether it's the practice room or whatever it is. So no one's taking me to the field. So, one up for you, I guess,
Yeah, I love being the first, so I'm here for it.
Hey, yeah, two for one today. So I'm here for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, how's the weather up there? We're getting pretty blasted with snow right now, which is kind of weird for New Mexico, but how's it up there?
That is really weird. Actually, it's like 60 and sunny here, which is extremely weird for Michigan.
Wow. Yeah. Normally that's us. So I guess whatever. We don't get a lot of snow, so we'll take what we can get whenever we get it. So,
I guess the weather's changing. I'm not mad about it.
Yeah, you get to wear shorts today. I'm in a hoodie and,
exactly.
and a beanie. Yeah. So before we kind of jump into talking about the coaching journey that you got and where you're at now and everything like that, I would like for you to kind of let myself know, but everybody else who's listening, kind of a little about you as the person. Where did you grow up, and then when did you get involved, or when did you first get involved in the sport of softball?
So I grew up in a little town in Ohio called Vermillion, Ohio. I grew up there, born and raised. I actually ended up going to Edison High School instead of Vermillion High School. Just a better fit, I think, personally, with what I wanted to do after high school. I started playing softball, probably when I was like 4 or 5.
Okay.
My brother was a baseball player his whole life, so I wanted to be just like my brother growing up. I started around like 4 or 5. The funny story is I didn't get good at softball until I was about a junior in high school. So okay. I was a late bloomer. I like to say there's an ongoing joke in my family. So my brother is really good at baseball. He's a really good lefty pitcher. And we thought, no way he wasn't not going to go to the MLB. Yeah. But he ended up tearing his labrum in college. And it kind of altered how he threw. And he still hasn't gained full mobility back in his arm. So he didn't get the chance to go pro, but I actually did. And my parents never saw that coming for me, especially when we were in high school.
Going up.
Yeah. So... yeah, I played, I started local around the area in Vermillion, actually where I met some of my best friends still to this day. I grew up playing softball with them. And then when I got, more interested and more dedicated to the sport is when I started traveling. So I started traveling for softball around like 12, 13 years old was my first travel ball team. Around that time is actually when I started hitting with my hitting coach, that pretty much paved my way to college. He literally was amazing. He transformed me as a player, as a person. I can't say enough about him. Gary Saunders, unfortunately, he has passed, but without him, I would have never become who I was. So when I got into high school, I started it started clicking in my head how to swing, how to play, things like that. And then from there, it kind of soared my sophomore year or my sophomore year, I was all Ohio, honorable mention. My junior year, I was first team all Ohio. So from there is kind of when I started getting traction of colleges. I had a couple offers to go D2 and D1, and I landed on a little D3 college in Indiana called Trine University. And I can't say enough great things about Trine. I now coach against them. I coach against my coach. He's like my mentor, but also at the same time, I want to beat him every chance I get. But yeah, that's kind of how came up into it. And a lot of hard work got me to college.
Exactly. That's number one thing is, kids can have all the talent in the world, but if you don't have the work ethic, you're not going to make it very far. And you might make it you might make it far, but realistically at some point in life, whether it's high school or college, that work ethic's going to outpace your talent for sure. And to go back to what you said at the very beginning, how you said you wanted to, you love being first, right? You're like, you love first of everything. That goes to life too, right? You're the first in your family, as you said. So there's another thing you got to one up on.
Yeah, I'm actually very competitive, so I really like having the one up on a lot of things.
I'm very competitive too, and I think if you're an athlete or a coach, we all have that little bit of extra competitiveness, but I don't think that's a bad thing. It's a good thing in all aspects. I'm sure you get that. I'm sure you get competitive whenever you realize another school is trying to recruit the same kid of yours too, so you do a little bit more, or whatever the case is. So, heck yeah, okay. Well, I appreciate you diving into who you are and where you grew up. So you were mentioning all those accolades that you piled up in high school, and I know you mentioned like travel softball growing up. So I've had this conversation with other coaches in other sports, football, baseball, even basketball, how in some areas, like there's cash grabs, right? And there's some that are truly beneficial and stuff like that. But now that you've already went through it, and now that you're a college coach, whenever you see young athletes who, I guess specialize in a sport, who do off-season stuff, travel ball, do you think that benefits them in certain areas, or I should say, let me say this. Do you think that kids who focus on one sport and travel the entire year, they go from travel ball and then they go into their season, do you think that benefits them whenever they get to that opportunity to go to college? Or do you think that not being a multi-sport athlete can sometimes have some sort of regression in, that transition?
I think that if you can be a multi-sport athlete, that's the best thing you can do for yourself. I don't remember a time other than in college that I wasn't playing multiple sports at a time. Growing up, I went from soccer to volleyball to softball to track and field. And then when I got into high school, I mainly went down to volleyball and softball, and I played JO and which is just junior Olympic volleyball in Ohio. Right. So basically travel volleyball. I played travel volleyball from January until June. And then I started high school season in August. And then I was playing softball literally year round. So
right.
I think that if you have the opportunity to be a multi-sport athlete, you should take it. Mainly because I think, and this is my soapbox area, this goes into it. So I think that travel ball around softball right now is really toxic. I think that we're expecting kids that are 14 to 18 years old to go play every single weekend of every summer until they go to college, where then they play even more. And I think that sometimes you just got to be a kid. And I think if you're playing another sport, you're taking your mind off softball. You're allowing yourself to at least switch it up from softball. You might not want to stop playing softball, and that's fine. I love that hunger. I was the same way. If I wasn't in softball season, I was adolescent. I was catching my friends. I was doing
Yep.
everything I possibly could, but I couldn't not take my mind off softball. So when I got the chance to be at volleyball, that's exactly what I did. I was no softball. I didn't even think about softball. That 2 hours that I was at volleyball practice, it's my time to escape from something that was pretty much like a career for me at that point.
Yeah.
So I think like multi-sport athletes are just something that trying to get away from, which is weird to me. I think different sports also teach you different aspects of being an athlete. So, I played soccer so I could run around a lot, and I played volleyball so I could work on my quick twitch muscles and my
Right.
explosiveness and things like that. And I think when you just focus on softball, you only practice what is for softball, and you lose all these different elements that you can gain from a different sport that you didn't even know you were losing. And I think that's for any sport. I, you know, I think going into football is so much different. You only have the high school season that season. So what are you going to do for the next 7 months until you have your high school season?
Right.
Being another sport, being another athlete in, another sport only keeps you primed for football season. It's the same thing with softball, I think.
Yeah.
So I love multi-sport athletes. I totally understand though if you're only into softball because you're like, I'm not good at anything else. Okay, that's understandable,
Right.
Like, am I gonna be a softball player and become really good at that? Or like, I'm not really good at basketball, so I'm just gonna sit the bench every single day.
Yeah. Right.
Now, the competitor in me would make me really good at basketball. But some kids just are talented in basketball, and that's just
Yeah.
the reality. So I think if you have the opportunity to be a multi-sport athlete, you should grasp that for the last moment. Because
Yeah.
when you hit college, it's all softball all the time. You don't get a play sport. You don't get time to escape. It's just softball, softball, softball.
It's a full-time job.
Yes, that's what I tell my players. We actually had a team meeting last night talking about being, where this is almost like a full-time job. Right now it's the off season, so we're not doing as much, but it's the player's responsibility to be in here to do that work. Same thing it goes for when you're in high school and things like that. Like,
Yeah.
you can take time away from your team, time away from your team aspect, but what are you doing outside of that? So
Right. So do you think that I'm glad that you brought up all of that because especially at the beginning when you said like toxic. So hold on. I don't want to get into that part of it necessarily, but like being that travel ball and all this stuff is so glorified nowadays, right? I don't know when you graduated and when you were doing all this stuff, but like back whenever I was in high school, travel ball was a thing, but like PBR and some of those like showcases and stuff weren't as big of a thing. And if they were at that time, like I mentioned it not too long ago about a football, it was really a money grab, really didn't do much. But do you think that like travel ball or showcases, do you think that they give you like athletes an advantage? Like, so I guess as the coach, right, you're a college coach, so I guess this can be specific to you. Like, do you think that it gives those kids advantages for them to be recruited if they are able to do the travel ball or the showcases? Because I know for a fact, I know plenty of kids who were super talented, but they just didn't have the financial ability to go do those things, right? Oh, look at that.
Yeah, this is my daughter, Kaya.
Heck yeah. Hi, Kaya. Hi.
Say hi.
Hi. I got 3 of you.
Staying busy.
Yeah.
I think, travel ball and things like that, going to those college showcases, they do put you ahead. And I'm not going to deny that. You go to the tournaments that you think the coach is going to be at that you want to get recruited by. And, other recruits are at that tournament as well. Things like that. It definitely gives you an advantage to be able to go to those tournaments and go to those showcases. My thing is that we don't have to go to 15 in the summer.
Yeah.
When I played, and me and my assistant are in the same boat. I graduated high school in 2014, graduated college in 2018. we only played 6 or 8 tournaments this summer, and 8 was if you went to nationals. So
Yeah.
it wasn't even guaranteed that you were going to play 8. I only went to college camps that invited me. I didn't go to, the random college showcases that were out there, things like that. And I think being able to have that opportunity, yeah, that does put you ahead, but it's not a necessity. You don't have to go to the big college showcases. A lot of college coaches invite you to camps,
Of course.
and that's how you get noticed by those coaches, those teams. But my thing around travel ball is that we're coming from a high school season where you play from March until June if you go far enough. And then your first tournaments for travel ball are the first weekend of June. So then you're going June until the last weekend of August, where then you're starting your fall sports. So you're looking at some teams that are going every single weekend from June until August.
Yeah.
And that blows my mind. I don't know. It wasn't a thing for my family, but I know a lot of my friends, they will look forward to the summer because they got to go see their grandparents in Florida, or they got to go on that extravagant trip with their parents because they earned it with great grades or things like that.
Right.
Now the big trips are, I'm going to Colorado for a week to play softball. And then the next week I'm in California. And then the next week I'm in Georgia. And then the next week I'm in Florida. That's wild to me. And I know that, yeah. When these teams are asking $3,000 just for being a part of the program. On top of that, you're paying for flights, paying for hotels, food, all that stuff. And it's just wild to me because when I played, like I said, we played 6-8 tournaments and I left the state 3 times. And maybe that's why, I went to one of the best D3 programs in the country. I went to Trine University. And I started all 4 years and I loved it. We played for a national title. We made runs. I was a 2-time All-American. I hold a couple records. You're able to achieve those things.
Yeah, I heard it. Yeah, I was gonna brag about you, but I'm glad I was gonna bring that up, but you brought it up before me. But yes, I 100% concur. You played for a really good school and you had a really good career. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I just want to give you flowers.
No, you're fine.
I'm giving you your flowers right now. You had a
Thank you.
You had a killer career for sure.
But I was able to achieve that with not really even leaving the state of Ohio and not going to these humongous tournaments that cost my parents thousands of dollars. The furthest I went was Virginia, my junior year of high school, because we made it to ASA Nationals and we came in 6th place and almost won it. And other than that, I didn't go anywhere near the big time ones. And you can still be successful and still go to great programs by not spending thousands of dollars just on travel ball. And then you're asking a parent, okay, why don't you come see Adrian College where you're going to spend thousands of more dollars just to get an education? And that's wild to me. I think I'm an advocate for D3. Like I said, I turned down multiple scholarships to go play out of high school and I didn't do it. But I wouldn't take back my D3 experience at all. So I think
I think that no matter where you go, if I've talked to other coaches in the college level and I've spoken on my recruiting process multiple times, but I think if you can really dig deep into where you're going to go, the level, if you truly care about the sport and you care about your playing time, whatever the sport is, it doesn't have to be D1, D2. You're going to find great games and great talent in NAI. You'll find great talent in JUCO. You'll find all this stuff, no matter where you go. So as you developed in softball and as you were, growing up and playing all your sports, traveling, all that stuff, when did you realize that you could play at the next level? I know you already went over your recruiting process a little bit, so you don't have to dive into that unless you'd like to. But when was your moment of realization that I can play at the next level? Was it against a certain team? Was it facing a certain pitcher? Was it striking out a certain player, or was it just starting getting letters? I mean, what was your moment?
So my junior year, after my junior year, going into my senior year of high school, I played for Gary Saunders, which was my hitting coach. And at that time, I was working with him for about 4 or 5 years. And this was the first year that I played with his team. And we went and played the first weekend, and we started a tournament, and it was called Spear Madness, which is one of the biggest Ohio tournaments now. But we went there, and I went against a girl that was going to, I want to say at that time she was going to either Georgia or Florida. And I was nervous. Obviously, you're going, this one of the best pitchers I've ever faced. I actually went 3 for 4 with 2 home runs off of her. And literally after that game, we got into the car because, like I said, I wasn't the sibling that was going to go big in softball. Yeah. And we got into the car, and my dad said, you know, you really showed yourself today. And he's like, I knew after this high school season that you were going to go somewhere big. But that just solidified it. And at that moment, I was like, oh, okay. Like, oh, I can go play college softball. And I think before we were trying to achieve it, but we weren't really getting any traction or anything like that. But when that moment happened is actually when I started receiving some emails from the schools in Ohio that were at the game, and they were like, "Hey, we'd love for you to come out to the our camp. You did so well against so and so," and that's when it like clicked in my head. I was like, I can play college softball, and I can do pretty good. And so it was actually a pretty cool moment to look back on and see like that's the moment it flipped.
So what position did you play in high school majority of your time?
I was a catcher in high school.
Catcher in high school? Okay.
Yeah.
I gotcha. So it sounds like Coach Gary was a big influence on your life. But was he the most impactful coach you've had, or was there another coach who made an impact on your life? If and why, if so?
Gary was probably the most impactful coach that I've ever played for, worked with. He made me who I was and who I became. When he passed away was actually when I decided to become a college coach. I actually had no desire to go coach college softball after college. But he passed away my senior year of college. And at that moment, I wanted to carry on his legacy. And I think it kind of hit me that when softball was done after my 4 years, and I was lucky enough to go play professionally. I played 2 years professionally. But in that moment, I was like, man, like no one else is going to be able to experience Gary. And so that honestly was the moment that I was like, I want to become him. My college coach was also someone that impacted me very much. He pushed me to all widths. He broke me and he built me back up. But he is probably the only person that brought out that next level in me. I've never had a coach push me as hard as he pushed me and make me as good as I was. And so, those two coaches right there made me who I am today and how I am around softball. And it's just, I always wish, and I always tell my girls this, that I'm someone that impacts their life. And I hope, obviously, in a positive way, anyone hopes that. And I try to on a daily basis, but I bring both of their styles into what I am teaching and how I'm teaching my girls right now.
I was going to be a question I had was, it sounds like you want other people to experience what you experienced. And if you were taking some of those philosophies or what those coaches did for you, if you're putting that towards your players now. And you actually answered my other question too. I was going to ask you, when did you decide you wanted to coach? So how long have you been doing this? So you mentioned you graduated in 2014, or I should say from high school in 2018. It was in college. So, when did you, I guess, how long have you been doing this and what was your timeline like? So like, where did you start, when it comes to like coaching wise, and then how did you get to Adrian?
So I started coaching right after my first professional season in 2018. I've kind of been everywhere. My first coaching position was at Central Methodist in Missouri. First time I'd ever been to Missouri. But I started there at a small NAIA school in literally the middle of nowhere. But it really taught me a lot. It was, where I got my master's and things like that as well.
Yep.
And then from there, I went back and played professionally. And then I went after that season to the University of Minnesota Duluth. And they are a D2 program not in the middle of nowhere in Minnesota, but it's extremely cold. And I learned quite a bit from Jen Walter that was there at the time. And from there, I stayed there for about 2.5 years. And then I went to Muskingum University in Ohio. So it brought me closer back to home. And then from there is when I ended up at Adrian. So been doing this now, since 2018. So 6 years.
2 and 6. Yeah,
If
2
I'm
and 4,
math.
6. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's how I do my math. 2 plus 4. Yeah. So.
Yep, that's exactly what I do
Yeah.
too. But yeah, so I'm going into my 3rd season here at Adrian. Super excited for this year, but definitely one of the most different teams that I've coached to this date. I think that I came in to a really good group. Super excited about the group that I currently have. But yeah, going into my 3rd year at Adrian and plan on making it a dynasty for as long as they'll have me.
Heck yeah. So how did you get into Dynasty would be sick. How did you get into anytime I hear Dynasty, I have to pause for a second. How did you actually get into the coaching world? Like, did you go, were you applying places? Was it a phone call? I mean, how did you get to, that Missouri school whenever you got there?
Yeah, so there's this, we have kind of, I don't think of the word. Can't think of the word that I'm thinking of, but we have this program that you have to be a part of when you're a coach. It's called NFCA. It's your association. That's what I was trying to say.
Yep.
So that's usually like when you see all the D1, they're NFCA All-Americans. That's kind of who selects it and things like that. But that's our association that we have to be a part of. So I actually Googled one day college softball coaching jobs. And I didn't even know what I was doing. I didn't have a resume. I didn't have anything. It was on my way home from Alabama, which is where I played professionally. And I was applying to all these places. And it's like a 15-hour drive from where I live in Ohio down to Alabama. And when I started to drive, my parents are amazing. My dad and my mom have supported me throughout my whole journey. But my dad actually came and stayed with me for a week, which was my last week of professional ball. And when we started to drive back to Ohio, I had applied to this place in Little Missouri, Central Methodist. And within like 5 hours of the drive, he called me, Pat Reardon, and was like, "Hey, I saw that you applied. Like, I just wanted to get to know you a little bit more." And when I got done with the phone call, I was like, yeah, I mean, I might as well do it. I want to get my master's. So I ended up getting my master's in education from there. But it was really random. And I didn't really put much thought into where I wanted to go or like what I wanted to do. I just wanted to get into it. So yeah, he was the first person that honestly called and interviewed me. And then 2 weeks later, I was packing up my stuff in Ohio and heading down to Fayette, Missouri.
Wow. Yeah. Just that's awesome though, that you got something that fast too, and what did you after all this time, right? You've been doing this for like we mentioned about 6 years. What do you love about coaching and what do you dislike about it? is there anything that you dislike about the actual side, like coaching in general?
Yeah, I'll start with what I do love. I love that on a daily basis, I get to see my team and create these relationships that I hope can impact them for the rest of their lives. I hope that I'm always someone that they want to call when something's happening, good or bad. But I love the most is building these relationships and building these young women to go into society and not fear anything that's going to get handed to them.
Right.
And I think what they can endure on a daily basis with me will help them be successful in what career they want to go to and what job they want to gain and things like that. And the world is such this big scary place, so you don't want to look at it as a college kid and be like, oh my God, I don't know what I'm going to do. But I'm hoping that, like I said, what they endure on a daily basis is something that makes life easy every single day.
Right.
So that is hands down my favorite part, is that I get to create relationships with these 18 to 22-year-old women that come into my programs. They give me their all for 4 years. And I think that is the best thing about coaching. The worst thing about coaching actually is when they have to leave.
Oh yeah.
I hate saying goodbye to people. Especially I see how hard it is to reconnect with people that you went to college with and things like that. It's because you come from all over,
Yeah.
So I think the hardest thing is watching them leave. Or another really hard thing for me is when I see them fail, when I know they can succeed.
Yep.
I always say to my girls, like, if I could be out there, I would, trust me, but I can't. So I'm going to give you every tool in my box to be able to build you up. But when they fail in moments that they know they can succeed, I hate that moment because I know they can succeed. They know they can succeed. They just didn't. And
Yep.
that's the hard part about softball, to being a failure. So probably one of the worst parts, seeing that on a daily basis.
Right. So when it comes to like your recruiting side of things, actually, I'm gonna ask this question because personally, I really enjoy watching softball. It's one of my favorite. Like I just saw something yesterday that they're gonna make a professional women's baseball team, like or like this
USA,
league.
Yep.
Yeah, and I was kind of upset because I was like, why don't you just give softball the same love you give the College World Series? Because College World Series softball, granted, it's always D1, but it's like that's so much fun to watch. So, where do you feel softball sits in today's world? Like, do you feel like it's getting better? Do you feel like, what have you seen from when you played to now? I guess where do you sit with softball in general right now?
I think there's more. Oh, I lost you. Hold on.
Oh no, it's all right.
My daughter clicked the button and now I can't see it. Okay, there we go. I think there's more that can be done with programs and things like that. It's definitely gotten better from even when I played professionally. There's more leagues now. You have Athletes Unlimited that are creating a lot of different opportunities for players. Unfortunately, I wish they expanded where we're looking more at a D2 and D3 athlete than just a D1 athlete. And
Right.
I get it. They pick the best of the best college softball players, and obviously that's Division I players. But I wish they expanded it a little bit more where they gave, D2 and D1 opportunities, or D2 and D3 the opportunity to give D1.
Right.
So I wish that would be something, but it's definitely grown in a positive way. Sorry, she's climbing everywhere.
Yeah, you're good.
But I wish if there was the same atmosphere around professional softball as you do see from the College World Series and things like that. You have almost what was like a 7 million people viewership this
Watching,
year.
yeah.
Yeah. And I wish that they gave the same love to the professional athletes, those same girls that are playing in that College World Series are going to play that in those professional games. So
Yeah.
But it's definitely getting better. I think it's getting stronger. And I hope that the same traction keeps up with, the same, like you said, the same love. And
Yeah.
I'm hoping the love still exists,
As time
going
goes.
into this next season. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I just think that, like uh, I was pretty young. I was probably like 10 or 12, but I remember watching my first probably college World Series softball wise, and it was like Cat and oh my gosh, I usually know the names, but
Cat
I
Osterman,
yes, Kat Osterman, and there was a few other girls. She was a blonde, Jenny Finch, I think.
Jenny Finch.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and like obviously there was a lot of others, and like those were polarizing because like damn, they're so dominant. And then it's like after you saw them there back then, obviously you had the Olympics softball, but you just don't see it as much anymore. So I think that it would be amazing for them to actually grow and put it on TV on the past that as well. So I agree for sure. So kind of talking, we've already talked a lot about like the travel ball and like the showcases, stuff like that earlier in the episode. And when it comes to, I always like to ask at least one recruiting question. Sometimes I go a little bit farther into it than I probably should, but I always like to I always like to ask a little bit about recruiting, because that's personally something I think I would love to do. My goal is to coach collegiately, and as I think about it, recruiting, in my opinion, is probably a really fun process. And that's actually how, what I do is I try to get my kids to the next level. I've sent out emails to coaches about kids, right? Things like that. So whenever you're doing your recruiting process, which I've heard is like your 9 to 5 truly, what are you looking for? And actually, you don't even have to dive into that. How are you finding your athletes? Are you looking locally? Are you looking on a national scale? Are you looking at like, this would be the first time I ask a coach this, but like NCHS or NCSA or whatever that website is, right? Are you utilizing all platforms, or are you kind of just focusing on in person or your questionnaires that you get?
Yeah. It's a complicated process, let me tell you. We normally start our summers. I go to kind of the bigger tournaments that are around me. So like Novi, Michigan has a really big tournament at the beginning of the summer. You have, several in Ohio that are pretty big. So I'm at those. Columbus, Ohio, a lot of the time is where you'll find me most of the summer. Those are, the bigger tournaments that I know that I've played in.
Yeah.
So I think that I normally stay in that area, but I honestly look on a national level. I don't have the recruiting budget, to fly out to Colorado and watch the Colorado Sparks tournaments or things like that. I wish I could. But I am open to the national level. I just happen to get a lot of girls from Ohio, Michigan, and Indiana. And I'm not mad about that. I think that there's a really good group that's untouched in those areas. And I think that there's a lot of hidden talent that comes from those areas that coaches look over. So we have a few girls on our team that I've come across teams on my or girls on my roster from California, Illinois. We have a couple from Indiana right now, a few from Southern Ohio and mainly Michigan. And I think it's hard sometimes recruiting on a national level, because I think there's like this weird area where you want to bring a kid on campus that's, let's say, from California, but like I would rather them to come for a camp, so then I could see them at the camp, and then let's do a visit, and then overnight with the girls, things like that. So I think it's hard when you go on a national scale, especially for a small D3 school. But a lot of our teams on campus do really well. I mean, obviously our hockey team has a lot of international kids.
Yep.
Our football team has a lot of kids from all over. Our baseball team goes a lot in Florida. So it's definitely possible. I'm just trying to figure out what's the best way of like bringing a player in from those areas, and how do I get them, really attracted to Adrian College. So, but yeah, I'm honestly, I look at an email first. So what sparks my interest if I get emails from, like 6 or 7 players and they're all going to the same tournament. So let's say they're all going to be in Columbus, Ohio next weekend. Well, I'm probably going to go to Columbus, Ohio because I'm going to knock off 6 recruits in one weekend.
Yep.
And that's how I kind of recruit. I'm big on video, like you said, all the recruiting sites, like I know Rise, College Bomb Jocks, and CSA, I think
Yep.
is one
Yeah.
of them.
Yep.
Things like that. I'm big on that. If any way you can get in front of me without me physically getting in
Having
front
to
of
go
you
there.
is the best way to get me to come and watch you. So big on video. Your initial email is really big for me as well. I like to know, what year you are, what are your positions, where are you from, what are you looking for in a college, things like
Yeah.
that. I'm also really big on being able to make sure you have my name right. We're Adrian College, not Adrian University.
Yeah, of
Small
course.
things like that also matter. So,
Of course.
but yeah, recruiting for me, like you said, is the big part of the job.
Yep.
Obviously, I think that's what gets you to the next level. I'm actually trying to get better, but I'm really bad about being on my phone. Like I am never on my phone.
Yeah.
And I tell a recruit that, like, when I start recruiting them, I'm really bad at my phone. It's not that I'm not interested in you, but I'm also not the person that will call you 17 times a week. So I'm trying to get a little bit better at that. It's hard for me, especially now with a 1-year-old running around all the time. She has my phone 95% of the time, literally just to throw it.
Yeah.
But truthfully,
if somebody calls me, tell mom, let mommy know. Presses the red button every time.
Yep. Let me know.
Yeah.
She is my biggest recruiting weapon, though. I have her almost every single day. And when I bring girls on visits and I have her, they instantly fall in love with her, which then I think makes them fall in love with the school. So I'll take it.
Yeah. Why not? Right? You got to utilize all tools.
Oh yeah, anything that can put me one up, I'm gonna use.
Yeah, I'm here for it. Hell yeah, I like it.
Oh yeah.
So it sounds like you were really open to any and everything to get girls to your school. I'll ask one more question about, I guess, that side of things. So realistically, whenever you're doing a lot of your, whether it's recruiting or whether it's, when you're actually physically going out and things like that, let me say this. When it comes to Adrian, right, you're Division III. So do you find it difficult to get girls to, like, understand Division III, educate, and then also let them know what they'll get from it? Just because there is a lot of, like, if I'm not going D1, like, in today's world, JUCO's a big route for softball and baseball. Like, you have top talent going JUCO, quote unquote, first, just so they have a better chance of going to that, D1 or whatever. So, like, where are you at with some of that, landscape?
It's extremely hard to recruit for a D3 school. And I think any school that is D3 and says, oh yeah, it's a breeze, is lying. You have to constantly battle, girls that are getting, especially if you're going for the right girls, they're getting looked at by D1s, they're getting looked at by D2s, even if they're not, if you're only getting looked at by D3s, that does not mean you're a bad athlete by all means.
Of course.
But you do have those recruits that you are battling with a D1, you're battling with a D2, and they're getting an athletic scholarship from them. And obviously we can't put athletic scholarship on our scholarships. It's all academic. And what I'm trying to say half the time to them is, if you look at, the financial aid packages that you're going to get from our college, it's going to be equivalent to a lot of D1s and D2s that you're looking at. And I think that's the hardest thing for recruits, but especially parents and travel ball coaches right now.
Yeah.
Their whole thing is, I want to say that my daughter got an athletic scholarship. I want to say that they're going D1 or D2. When 90% of the time, look at the portal right now. It is crazy.
Top to bottom. Yep.
Everywhere. Everyone's transferring. And we're getting to the point where, kids are getting releases from colleges And they're like, oh yeah, Adrian College was extremely interested in me, and through my recruiting process, maybe I should see where they're at. Well, you already went to a different college. It's hard for me to put you on my roster right now because I had to bring in someone else that was going to be that piece. And so it's really hard because you're battling on this constant, daily basis. You're trying to explain to, an 18-year-old, but also their parents, that just because it's D3 and I can't say you're getting an athletic scholarship, you're probably going to pay equivalent to some of the athletic scholarships that you're getting.
Right.
It frustrates me because, like I said at the beginning of this, I'm an advocate for D3. I played D3. I played on, like I said, for national championships. I played on the big stage. I played on, Oklahoma City. I played that, and I was at D3 college, and I wouldn't take back my 4 years for anything. And I chose that over D1 and D2 scholarships.
I think that, like you said, you had a really good experience, and I think it's just what people see on TV, like we talked about earlier, not getting enough love to understand really what you're getting. But realistically, at the end of your tenure of college, at the end of the day, you have 7% of high school athletes get to participate at the next level, right?
Yeah.
No matter what, that's from D1 to junior college, everywhere in between. So and that's something I try to do with my athletes, was like, look, it doesn't matter where you go. You're part of 7% of the entire high school nation. There's there's millions of kids, and you're top 7%. So go do that. And you never know, like you said, transfer portal. What happens if you go be an All-American at Adrian? You're blah, 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 whatever your accolades are. And then what happens if you talk to your coach and you're like, hey, and you guys, maybe I can go play at Alabama, or maybe I can go play at Oklahoma, right? I'm not saying that you can transfer, but anything could be an opportunity. Same way as if you went to Oklahoma and you don't see the field till you're a fifth-year senior, how do you feel about those 4 years that you could have been playing here, right? Or whatever. So I think it's just a matter of education, but also, the willingness of somebody to listen and know where they stand, really. If they're going to go start for Alabama, sure. Or if they're going to go start for LSU, makes sense. But if you're going to be, and I say this all the time, if you're going to be fourth or fifth year person, whatever sport, maybe you should consider other options.
And make those college coaches tell you that, like, if I work hard and I do everything you tell me to do, and I'm doing this, am I going to be a freshman year starter, or are you bringing me in because you hope by my junior or senior year that I can see the field? Ask those questions, because I'll tell you straight up through my recruiting process where I see you. Do I think if you work hard and, you do everything right and you're successful, you're going to be on the field? Yeah, you're probably that kind of recruit. Or do you need to develop under me for a year or two, and now I'm looking at bringing you on the field?
Yeah.
And I think we need to start asking those tough questions, because, some colleges still have recruiting numbers. And they're like, you have to bring in 10 freshmen. Okay, so all 10 of those freshmen going to start day one, year one? No. So why am I going to go into a program when I'm one of 10, where you can go into a D3 program? That's where you also do your homework. And you're one of 7, and they're graduating, the starter that's in my position. Yep. So I think, like, the lack of information and the lack of, research from these recruits, from these parents, is just kind of the frustrating part too, because, like I said, I'm competitive. I don't want to lose to a D1 school that I know as a D3 school we can roll up and go beat. And I think that's the most frustrating part, because they want to hear, oh, I'm a D1 athlete. And I'm like,
that's
okay.
tough. That's tough. Just so you know, I just realized that D3 rolling up on a D1 who we can beat. That's tough right there. Hell yeah, I like that.
And there's a lot of people that I lost recruits to, that we are competitive with them. And I like to say that we're better than them. And so I think that it's difficult for me as a coach, a D3 coach. And they're like, oh, yeah, I'm going to so-and-so. I'm like, no offense to that program, they still have to get their number, and I get that. And maybe you're the piece that they're missing, that they turn their whole program around. But you need to ask the tough questions. You need to make the college coaches start to squirm a little bit.
Right. So then how do you build a successful program, or actually not program, how do you build a successful culture on the level of buy-in and mindset as a coach?
I think the biggest thing, and going back to, my two people that I looked at through the coaching process, I look at, how they brought me up and the different aspects from Gary and from Coach D. And I think the biggest thing is creating a culture of love. And that sounds so cheesy. And I know that I'm not dumb. But I truly mean it when every single day I'm excited to be out on the softball field because I love the group of girls that I'm with. I love the women that I have in my program that can compete right now. And a lot of college coaches don't have that. They're missing that factor. And I would do anything for my team if any of them needed anything in their life, during college or after college. And I tell them that on a regular basis. It's okay to show compassion towards your team. And I think college coaches think, oh, that you're showing them weakness. That's not weakness. I think that's more strength. You don't have to be this hard ass all the time. You don't have to only yell at your players. And I think that's where, when I came in, I kind of flipped the page for a lot of, my current athletes on my team because they thought I was going to come in and be this hard ass and yell at them all the time. When in reality, I just want to coach softball and have fun. So why am I going to make it miserable for both of us? I hate yelling. That's one of my least favorite things to do. So why on a daily basis am I going to show up and do that? Now, does my team deserve it sometimes? Yes, when they do some silly things, but I don't yell at them. Why do us coaches just go straight to yelling? Why aren't we looking back and being, okay, let's find the culprit. Why did they do what they did? Even if it is outside of softball or in softball, I'm here to teach them. I'm here to build them. They're young women that don't know what's going to happen after college, things like that. They're scared about life. They don't know what they want to do, all these things. So why am I going to add to it? And I think that is what I strived myself on when I first came in, is that I'm not going to punish them for being humans. I'm not going to punish them for making mistakes, for doing the wrong thing sometimes. Because guess what? When I was in their shoes, I did the wrong things sometimes.
Of course.
And my coach built me up. He didn't destroy me and then bury me. He taught me, okay, let's learn from this and build this up. And I think that's a big thing when I came into this, is that do it out of compassion. You're compassionate about softball. You love softball. I think a lot of college coaches forget a lot of the time that they are only 18 to 22-year-olds.
Yep.
Some have, 23, 24-year-olds with the, all the rules and things like that, but they are only 18 to 22. I know your career relies on 18 to 22-year-olds. I'm not naive to think that, but if you want the best out of a human, why are you going to rip them apart and tear them down and then expect them to go out there and have your back? And that's the most frustrating thing when it comes into college coaching in any sport, not even just for softball. I hear all the time, I quit because my coach was mean to me and tore me down and degraded me on every single day. I don't remember a fun time. And I don't want any of my players to leave my program, be like, man, I hate her. She was awful. We never had fun. That sounds miserable for me and for them. So I think that's a big thing when it comes to my culture. I'm just teaching them that you can be a human. You can exist. You can make mistakes. You are allowed to do that. There's room for that here. But let's try to build you up and learn from that, then tear you down and push you away.
Right.
So I think I like to say that that's how my culture is built.
Right. I love that. I really love how you have that instilled from those coaches previously. And I do think that, it's a full-time job. So what's the point of being, people hate their 9 to 5, right? But sports aren't supposed to be hateful. So going to practice and all those things, that you might hate those things, but realistically, they're not the worst thing you could be doing. So, and they're designed to be fun, right? Would you rather be working at Taco Bell right now, trying to make it through college, or would you rather be practicing today, right, or whatever their case is? And not to take away people who work, but you're here to play. You're here to play, sports. So, which kind of leads to the second part of that question is, how do you build a successful program on the level of wins and longevity, and how do you sustain that? Now, listen here. I will say this to you. You brought up the word dynasty earlier. That's a big term. That's a big term. Okay. So I hope you get there, and I want to hear how you build the dynasty, because every coach, as you mentioned, they survive off of 18 to 22-year-olds, right? Or high schools 14 to 18. So how do you build this program off, to win, and how do you keep it going? How do you sustain it?
So when I first started here, Adrian, they were 10 and 26. All of the players on the team had never experienced a postseason, have never experienced a conference tournament, anything like that. So when I first started here, that was my personal goal. I want to build something where they're winning, they're having a successful year, and they're experiencing something that I looked forward to every single year when I started playing softball at the collegiate level. At Trine, it was instilled in us that we were going to be the best in conference, which was then going to lead us to a regional, and then going to lead us to a super regional, and then play for a national championship. So how was I going to make that a priority in a group of women that haven't ever experienced it? And it honestly just came with them buying in and wanting that hunger to be successful and to have, that success. And I am extremely lucky that I came into a group of women that were hungry to win. And everything that we laid out, they ate up. And I think that is where it started, is having, players that are coachable, that will follow you, down this path that is not easy. You're going to fail. You're going to get kicked. You're going to get punched, but you're still going to try to come up and succeed. So I think it starts with, obviously, the players that you're recruiting. Like I said, we came into a group that was hungry, but then we kept adding. And I think that's huge, is finding those recruits that are just as hungry. Is this recruit just happy to say they're on a college roster? Or is this recruit someone that wants to win a national title with you? And I think you got to ask that in the recruiting process. What are your goals throughout college? Are you okay with being someone that sits on the bench all 4 years and never gets better? Or do you want to beat out someone that is a senior starter right now? And I think it starts there, is that in, bringing in those recruits that are hungry as well. But coachability goes a long way. Your players got to be coachable. You've also got to show, like I talked about, my culture is that compassion, show that drive, show that want as a coach, to bring, your program up to the level that you want. I think a lot of it is strategy as well. I think, like I said, I'm really lucky that I played for Trine. So we know the strategies. My assistant coach also played at Trine with me. So we both came from, that successful program. We're on the same page about a lot of stuff. So, how do we strategize in terms of, when do we throw who, and when do we pull them out, who do we put in, and who do we start, and things like that. I think that comes from a lot of it too. But it starts with your players being coachable and you being able to coach. Are you showing up to practice and you're just sitting on a bucket and just saying things out of your mouth? Or are you in the middle of it? Are you teaching them how to do those things? Are you learning while they're learning? Are you going outside your research sources and being like, hey, I don't know how to fix this. Okay, let me see if I can figure out someone that does know how to fix this. College coaches, I think, are at this point where they're so scared to, give ideas to other teams because they don't want to lose to them and they don't want them to be better. It's not about that. We're a community. At the end of the day, we're a softball community. So go to those coaches that you've played against. Ask them what they're doing if this is happening. How do you fix it? What drills do you do? I think a coach that is learning on a daily basis is someone that's going to have a successful program as well. Are you someone that, when they leave, they turn off their phone, they shut down their laptop, and they don't think about softball till the next day? Or are you doing research on your own? Are you finding those resources, things like that? So I think that's also how you build that dynasty, how you build, a program that wants to follow you in that successful culture as well.
I love that. Damn, I love that. Oh shit. Sorry. Sorry for
Oh no,
cussing.
you're fine. Nope. Actually been probably one of my best hours of not cussing, so you're fine.
Oh, look at that. Hell yeah. It's because you're on TV. Or it's because
Yeah,
you're on
pretty
the
much.
screen. Yeah.
Pretty much.
No, you're good. I know for a fact I don't have coaches cuss on here, but I know that they cuss, but it's all right. I understand.
I will
Um,
never deny that. And I always say that to recruits. I'm like, we cuss. I'm so sorry if you don't like that. You don't have to partake, but I do cuss.
yeah. Well, so I was gonna say, so what you mentioned about like how coaches don't want to do that, right, back and forth, and I know coaching's starting to get a little bit younger. I don't know if it's because I'm part of that age group now, right? Like I don't know how. I know you said you graduated in 2014 from high school, so I was in 2013. So like I'm also the same way when it comes to coaching. Like I've had multiple times where I've reached out to coaches, so I'm like, I don't know how to handle this situation or whatever, and you know they were more experienced than me, but I know like I wouldn't say old school coaches, but kind of that old coaching way is like it's my way or the highway. You know, I'll figure it out. Like you know, and they don't want to give they don't want to give out any advice or whatever. So I don't know if it's like an age thing because like how you know our age, or if it's because like I think it's also a personality thing too. Like if you're a personality person, like you said, compassion, you want to be the best, but you also aren't afraid to help somebody out who's struggling because that's like a compassion thing, right? Like, you know, if you're struggling for whatever it is mentally, you can't figure things out, like you obviously want somebody to help you, but then at the same time, you got to be able to give that same to when somebody asks. So I think it's I don't know. I don't know if it's a personality thing, if it's an age group thing, like where you grew, like the times of coaches. Like I don't know, but I understand. I see exactly where you're coming from.
Yeah. Yeah, it's super frustrating because I am a younger head coach. So I don't, I don't have all the experience in the world. I still talk to my coach at Trine on a regular basis. I ask him a lot of questions on, this is what I'm seeing, how'd you fix it in your career and things like that.
Yeah.
But if you go outside your people, no one wants to, try to relate to you and be like, you know what, we had that same problem happen last year and we did this and it helped. And
Right.
I'm the first one, and maybe this is my problem. But when anyone emails me, I email back almost immediately. And so, if a coach is reaching out and they're like, hey, we saw you do this in warm-ups, like, can you explain why you do that? Or I'll be like, yeah, sure, why not? Like I will love to explain why. And I think that a lot of coaches don't want to do that, which is weird to me. I don't know why, but it's weird to me. So I'm
Like
hoping that we can kind of flip the page.
yeah, well I also think the sport matters too. And I don't mean
Yeah.
to say that on like no, I do actually. Like baseball, softball, um, anything where there's a lot of money involved with travel, there's a lot of ego. And I don't ca- and
Yes.
I don't know if that's, you know, I haven't talked to, you know, high level softball coaches. I haven't really spoken to, you know, club level that teach 12U. Like I haven't really spoke to many softball coaches. Obviously, you're the first one. So I don't know what it is, but I grew up playing baseball, right? I grew up doing those things. I obviously see on social media what it is, and you know, I know for a fact that these sports usually involve ego. So I don't, and I don't mean to, you know, speak on it in a negative way, but I think that it does play a factor in those coaching and certain people that coach those certain areas too. But I do think you're right. I think that and not just though. I think every sport has a little bit of an ego too. By the way, don't take it
Yes.
just of these sports. I think every sport has a little bit of an ego for whatever direction that is. I think it's just a matter of how you handle that and if you're willing to flip the page, as you said, to where it's
Yes.
not the way that we grew up or not the way that you got coached or whatever. So, which actually kind of leads to perfect segue is: do you have any tips or advice for new or struggling coaches?
Oh, I love this question. Because I've been at almost every level except, D1 or JUCO. Um, I've been pretty much anywhere you can imagine and, demographically, things like that. I think the biggest thing that I always, promote to younger coaches or coaches that, aren't finding that click are, if you can and you're willing to, do your research. That's big. Sit down at night, do your research. What drills are working for other teams? A lot of teams put out drills that you can watch on their social media or things like that. Reach out to some of the bigger coaches. The worst they can do is just not answer. I hope they do. But don't also diss just because, I'm a D3 coach and let's say you're a D2 coach. Just because I'm below you in the eyes of the NCAA doesn't mean that I don't have good ideas that you can grab from me.
Absolutely.
I'm very open and honest in what I do on a daily basis. So if you reach out and you're like, hey, I saw you take this team from 10-26 and the next year you were 28-13 or 15 or whatever it was. How'd you do that? I would love to sit with you and explain to you exactly how I did that. And same thing on a daily basis. Like, you keep bringing these teams back to conference tournament. How are you doing it? Ask me those questions. Some coaches won't answer. That's what we were just talking about. Some coaches have this ego that it's, they has to stay their way and they won't share their tips and tricks, but don't be afraid to reach out. Conventions are everywhere. And it doesn't have to so one of my first conventions that I went to, was actually a baseball convention, in Chicago. And it was amazing. I learned so much stuff from sitting at a baseball convention. And, don't just diss the conventions just because they're not softball. You also have the big ones like through the NFCA and things like that. And sometimes, I think that it's really useful, but I also think sometimes it's a little watered down. So, find the conventions, figure out, the resources, things like that, but don't be afraid to ask questions. Ask the questions.
Ask questions. Yep. That's important. So then that leads to my last question. It's the most important question.
Segue.
Yeah, perfect segue. My last question for you, which by the way, I agree. I think asking questions, not being asking for help is obviously crucial, and not just coaching, but in life. So I'm not trying to avoid what you said at all. I promise. I just thought it was perfect segue. But it's the name of the podcast. It's the name of this, and why we're here is why do you do this? What's your why? Why do you coach?
My why started when I was, like we had talked at the beginning of this. I wasn't, the chosen athlete from the jump to go to a college softball program and be what I was. My why is because when I needed coaches the most, they decided to push me down and they tried to shut me up and they tried to shove me away because I wasn't the ideal image of an athlete. I wasn't someone that was amazing at the sport yet. I look at that, and this happened when I was 12 years old. I look at that 12-year-old. I wish I could give her a hug. But I look at that 12-year-old and I never want a singular person to experience what I experienced with coaches telling me that I wasn't good enough, that I was fat, that I wasn't fast enough and things like that. Yeah. I strive myself on a daily basis to be there for all of my athletes. Even if you're not one of my athletes, I am available for anyone that needs me. And not just a softball sense. I want to be someone that impacts people's lives in a sense that, sport brings community. You have a community in sports. Athletic departments have a community. I want to be an impact on that community. I want to be someone's why. I want to be the person that they call when they get a promotion in their job or they are, they just found out that they're pregnant and they're so excited and things like that. I want to be that call. I want to be their why they love college softball. So I think it goes back to, when I was young and things like that. I don't want anyone to be able to talk to the women that I coach on a daily basis like that. I want to create a positive environment around sports. And I think that's what keeps me going every single day. And now I have a 1-year-old daughter that's going to hopefully experience college sports. I don't know. She might be bad at sports. I don't know. But I hope one day she gets to experience college sports, and that's all I look for her. And when we go through the recruiting process and things like that, I want her to find a coach that's going to uplift her and bring her, to her best of her ability and be the strongest woman that she can be. And that's why I do this every single day, because I get that opportunity with 18 to 22-year-old women that are on my team.
That was a very, very good why. I love that why. You could feel the emotion from when you're talking about when you were a kid, and that's important, is to if you have ever had that moment and you still stuck through it, anything past that with a good coach is an amazing feeling, especially when you get the coaches that you had that you were mentioning. So I love that. Your why is very, very heartfelt, and hopefully, if you guys are still listening to this podcast, you guys felt that through your earbuds. Well, I will say this. So, Coach, I do appreciate you taking the time to come on here today. I really hope that maybe next time we can dive in we can have another conversation and maybe talk a little bit more about like diving into coaching. I don't know, but I'd love to have you back on. I loved it. It was really good time with you today.
I had an amazing time. Thank you so much for having me. I'd love to come back.
Sweet. Well, I love that. If you guys are still listening, make sure you guys, HTB, especially if you're on YouTube, hit that bell, like, subscribe, all the 9 yards. You guys know what to do. If you're a listener, audio, if you're on Spotify, all that stuff, make sure you guys leave a review. Hit the stars. Say whatever you have to say, but whatever you say, make sure you say it with your chest. Coach, thank you again. And with that being said, we'll see you guys next time. Peace.